thing called PMDD. And everybody knows what PMS is. That's the typical hormonal changes while you're on your period. But PMDD is something that affects you up to 2 weeks before your period. And my mood was constantly fluctuating. And at the time, I was in a relationship, and I could see the clear difference between the 2 weeks before my period and the 2 weeks after. Literally, the 2 weeks before, I basically hated him. Like, every discrepancy I had, everything that irritated me, everything that could make me upset, made me upset. And it was like a cycle, because I would be on this rant, be in all these moods. I wouldn't even like him. I didn't want to look at him. I didn't want to kiss him. And it was like the 2 weeks after, I'm thinking about marriage. I'm all lovey-dovey. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I started noticing that it was a pattern. Like, I noticed, I was writing down like when it was happening and when it wasn't happening. That's how I realized the whole 2 week pattern thing. And I dismissed it because I don't know anything about mental health or PMDD. Like, I'm just knowing that something is going on. And I mentioned this to my gynecologist, and they were like, oh, well, there's nothing we can really do about it. You can exercise and maybe change your diet. It might just be your hormones. I told my primary doctor, and she was like, oh, well, I tested your thyroid, and I didn't see anything wrong. So it really wasn't until I actually received the education that I learned that something else bigger was happening. And so when I actually got this information, I was like, wow, like, I wonder how many other people are going through this. So I started Googling, like, oh, I feel different the 2 weeks before my period. And then all of these articles started popping up about other women who were having these experiences where they were like downright depressed or having full-blown anxiety attacks, and they felt like they hated their husbands. And the recommendations I got was to, all the feelings that you get and all the impulsive thoughts that you have, I started to write them down so that I can make decisions that were actually based out of critical thinking. Because if I made decisions based on when I was really hormonal or in a bad mood, I might have made decisions that would change my life. So I had to write them down, and then I would revisit it 2 weeks after when I was feeling better, to see what thoughts were my actual feelings and what thoughts were just based on how I was feeling at the time. But then I read this one article, and it kind of changed my perspective a little bit. So in the article, they said that PMDD could be controlled with cognitive behavioral therapy. And with cognitive behavioral therapy is something that works on changing certain behaviors. And I'm thinking, like, well, if PMDD is caused by hormones, then how can behavior modification change that? But basically, in an article, they were saying that the ways that you feel when you're in this moody state, or when you're in this intense state, are what you may be feeling on a regular basis, but because you're exacerbated and you're, at your max where anything can come out, it's like usually those are the feelings that you will put aside, because society tells you that you have to be feminine, that you have to make things work, and you're already feeling guilty all the time because you're irritated for no reason and you're aggravated. So you're able to contain it when your hormone levels are down. So you're able to put on this persona of who you wish to be and the way that you want to be in your relationship and in your job or your career and everything else. But when you get to that stage where everything is at 100, you're more likely to say what it is you're actually feeling. You're more likely to be who you are and speak up about the things that you think aren't right. So in my relationship, I started speaking up and getting irritated about the things that usually I would be able to be like, oh, you know what? I don't want to argue. I don't want to fight. I don't want to deal with this. I'm able to just say, I'm just going to ignore how I'm really feeling about it and put it to the side for the sake of making things work. So it's kind of an up and down thing. Like, even though I felt like it was a bad thing, at the same time, it was a good thing because I was expressing myself in the ways in which I really felt. But the behavior part of it comes in how we express ourselves, how we interact with people. And on top of that, in this cognitive behavior therapy, husbands will be also required to take the therapy so that they can learn about PMDD and they can know how to respond when their wife is going through something. They can learn how to interact in a relationship together so that they can work on these things together, and all the guilt and anger is not just falling on the female in the relationship. And that's big. I mean, the other ways to treat PMDD is birth control, but if you're somebody like me, I've tried every single birth control, and even the copper version of Mirena, I forgot what it's called, Paragard. That one supposedly doesn't have hormones, but after a year or two of having it, I started having pains in my side, and I started Googling once again, like, I had pains in my side, could it be related to the Paragard? And a lot of people were saying that they were having all different types of pain, and they were having issues with their gallbladder, and once they got the Paragard or the Mirena taken out, the pain completely went away. So I'm like, I don't know what other reason this pain could be caused by, so I'm just going to get it taken out. I got it taken out, boom, the pain went completely away. But anyway, I've tried multiple birth controls, and they all had side effects. I took the pill, made me throw up every day. I took the NuvaRing, it completely threw my hormones out of whack. Same with the Depo shot. It was just like, all right, this is not worth me and my mental health and my body and all these side effects. So that wasn't an option for me. The next thing, and I brought it to the attention of my PCP, she was more focused on the anxiety part of it. So she was like, well, I'm just gonna put you on Lexapro. It'll help with your anxiety, and it's also known to help for something like PMDD, but you should see your gynecologist. And my gynecologist said the same thing, so I got on the Lexapro. The Lexapro was really good at first, but I started doing more research, and I found that, you know, the more you take Lexapro, or any anxiety medication for that matter, you will always have to take it, and you'll have to take more and more over time, because your body starts to build immunity to it. And in my eyes, that just wasn't an option for me. So I stopped taking it, and, you know, afterwards, you know, when you stop taking medication, sometimes your symptoms can get 2 times worse than before you started taking the medication. So I stumbled a lot. And I think the best part of taking that medication was that my muscle tension didn't completely go away. Other than that, I have not acquired the coping skills that I needed, and I didn't get to the root of the problem. That's the thing about medication. Medications only mask the symptoms. It doesn't actually fix the problem, especially if the problem is mental, emotional, and spiritual. You know, it's you got to think of the mind-body connection. There's way more to it than just masking the symptoms. If you really want to get a hold on your depression and anxiety, you have to find out where it's actually stemming from. So really, that was just a temporary fix. I know that I dealt with anxiety my whole life, because I always had that muscle tension. I always felt like, even I didn't have social anxiety, which social anxiety is different from general anxiety. Social anxiety is when you have issues